The stars had always seemed peaceful to the people of Earth. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They built telescopes and sent radio signals into the darkness, hoping someone would answer. They dreamed of meeting alien life, of joining a community of intelligent beings spread across the galaxy. Those dreams died on a Tuesday morning in June. Admiral Kethenor of the Valari Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger in his view screen. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he studied the primitive world below. The Valari had conquered hundreds of planets across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. This one would be no different. The species living here had barely reached their own moon. They posed no threat whatsoever. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered, his voice flat and bored. "Target their largest population centers first. Make examples of them." The weapons officers obeyed without question. Across the Valari fleet of 200 ships, plasma cannons powered up and locked onto their targets. The humans below had no idea what was coming. Their satellites detected the alien vessels too late. Their governments had barely begun emergency meetings when the first shots fell from the sky. New York City ceased to exist at exactly 9:47 in the morning. One moment, 8 million people were going about their daily lives. They were drinking coffee, riding subways, walking their children to school. The next moment, there was only fire. A beam of concentrated plasma struck Manhattan and expanded outward in a wave of destruction. Buildings melted like candles. People vanished before they could even scream. The Hudson River boiled away to nothing. The attack continued for 6 hours. London fell. Tokyo fell. Mumbai, Beijing, Moscow, Sydney, Cairo, Paris, Berlin, Mexico City. The Valari targeted every major population center they could identify. Their weapons carved craters into the Earth's surface. Each one a grave for millions. Patricia Holloway watched the destruction from a military bunker buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She was 53 years old, an admiral in the United States Navy, and she had spent her entire career preparing for wars against human enemies. Nothing in her training had prepared her for this. On the screens around her, death tolls climbed higher with each passing minute. 300 million, 500 million, 1 billion, 2 billion. Her aide, a young lieutenant named Daniel Cruz, stood beside her with tears running down his face. He had family in Los Angeles. The city no longer existed. "Admiral," he whispered, his voice breaking. "What do we do?" Patricia did not answer immediately. She watched the numbers climb past 3 billion dead. 3 billion human beings erased in an afternoon. Children who would never grow up. Parents who would never come home. Dreams and hopes and futures all turned to ash. Something cold settled in her heart. It was not despair. It was not fear. It was something far more dangerous. It was patience. "Get me every surviving military commander on a secure channel," she said quietly. "Every government leader still alive. Every scientist, every engineer, every person with knowledge we can use." Daniel stared at her. "Admiral, we can't fight them. You saw their ships, their weapons. We don't have anything that can touch them." Patricia turned to face him. Her eyes were dry and hard as stone. "Not yet," she said. "But we will. It might take years. It might take decades. But we will find a way. And when we do, we will make them pay for every single life they took today." Above the wounded Earth, Admiral Cathaner observed his work with satisfaction. Smoke clouds covered entire continents. The planet's communication networks had gone dark. Scattered pockets of survivors huddled in whatever shelter they could find, but they posed no threat. The Valari broadcast their surrender terms on all frequencies and then departed. They did not bother leaving occupation forces. What was the point? These primitives could barely build rockets. They would never be a threat to anyone. Kethanar made his report to the Valari High Command as his fleet jumped to faster than light speeds. Another world conquered. Another species pacified. The Galactic Council would update their records. The universe would continue as it always had. He was so certain of this that he never looked back. He never saw the first flickers of light in the darkness, the surviving humans emerging from their shelters to count their dead. He never saw Patricia Holloway standing in the ruins of Denver, looking up at the stars with murder in her eyes, and bunkers and tunnels and caves across the planet. 4 billion survivors began the long work of digging out. They buried their dead when they could find bodies to bury. They rationed food and water and medicine. They organized themselves into communities, then into regions, then into a single unified species for the first time in human history. Patricia Holloway became their leader not through election, but through necessity. She was the highest-ranking military officer still alive, and she was the only one with a plan. That plan was simple in concept and staggering in scope. "We go underground," she announced to the surviving leadership. "Every factory, every laboratory, every military installation. We move it all below the surface where they can't see us from orbit. We salvage every piece of Valari technology we can find from crashed scout ships. We learn how their weapons work. We learn how their engines work. We build our own." A scientist named Samuel Patterson raised his hand. "Admiral, even if we could reverse engineer their technology, it would take generations to match their capability." Patricia nodded slowly. "Then we have work to do. Every generation from now until we're ready will contribute to this goal. We will not forget what they did. We will not forgive, and we will not stop until we have the power to answer them." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she was asking. Not revenge in their lifetimes necessarily. Revenge as a legacy. Revenge as a religion. Revenge as the purpose that would drive humanity forward through the darkness. One by one, they agreed. They had lost everything. Family, friends, homes, cities. The world they knew was gone forever. All they had left was each other and the burning need to make their enemy pay. Daniel Cruz stepped forward. "What do we tell the people, Admiral?" "They're scared. They're grieving. They need hope." Patricia considered the question carefully. Then she spoke words that would be remembered for centuries. "Tell them that Earth remembers. Tell them that their children will grow up learning the names of the dead. Tell them that one day, maybe not in our lifetime, but someday, humanity will rise from these ashes. And when we do, the Velari will learn what it means to attack a species with nothing left to lose." Outside the bunker, the sun was setting over a ruined world. Smoke still rose from the craters where cities had stood. The stars came out one by one, cold and distant and uncaring. But somewhere in those stars, the Valari Dominion was celebrating their easy victory. They had no idea that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The Day of Ashes, as it came to be known, did not break humanity. It forged them into something new, something harder, something patient. And patience, the Valari would eventually learn, was the most dangerous weapon of all. 15 years passed in silence. The Valari Dominion reported to the Galactic Council that the species known as humans had been successfully conquered. Their planet had been pacified. Their civilization had been reduced to scattered survivors living in primitive conditions. There was nothing more to discuss. The Galactic Council accepted this report without question. They were a governing body of 47 species spread across thousands of star systems. The conquest of one minor world barely registered in their records. Humans were noted as a failed species, unable to defend themselves, destined to fade into extinction within a few generations. The Council moved on to more important matters. They could not have been more wrong. Beneath the scarred surface of Earth, humanity was not dying. It was transforming. The tunnel networks that Patricia Holloway had ordered began as simple shelters, but grew into something far more ambitious. Using mining equipment salvaged from surviving facilities, human workers carved out massive underground cities. They built factories and caverns miles below the surface. They constructed laboratories and converted salt mines and military bases in abandoned subway tunnels. Samuel Patterson led the scientific effort. His team had recovered pieces of 3 Valari scout ships that crashed during the invasion. The aliens had assumed these wrecks were worthless debris. They were wrong. Human engineers took apart every component, studied every circuit, analyzed every alloy. Within 3 years, they understood the basic principles of Valari technology. Within 5 years, they had built their first working prototype of a faster-than-light engine. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning in a laboratory beneath what used to be Kansas. A young physicist named Maria Santos activated the experimental drive system while her colleagues watched through reinforced glass. The device hummed, glowed bright blue, and then folded space itself. A metal sphere vanished from one end of the testing chamber and appeared instantly at the other end. Maria stared at the results on her screen, then turned to face Samuel Patterson with tears in her eyes. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Samuel nodded slowly. His hands were shaking. For 15 years he had worked toward this moment. For 15 years he had wondered if it was even possible. Now the proof sat in front of him, undeniable and beautiful. "Tell the Supreme Commander," he said quietly. "Tell her we're ready for Phase 2. Patricia Holloway had aged in the years since the invasion. Her hair had gone silver, and lines had carved themselves deep into her face. But her eyes remained as hard and determined as ever. When she received the news about the successful FTL test, she allowed herself a small smile. It was the first time anyone had seen her smile since the Day of Ashes. "Begin construction of the fleet," she ordered. "Every factory, every resource, every available worker. We've been hiding long enough." The production effort that followed was unlike anything in human history. Underground shipyards turned out warships at an incredible pace. Human engineers had not simply copied Valari technology. They had improved it. Their ships were faster, more maneuverable, and far more heavily armed. Where the Valari used plasma weapons, humans developed kinetic projectile systems that fired metal slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. No shield in the galaxy could stop a piece of tungsten moving that fast. General Cristina Vega oversaw the military preparations. She had been a colonel on the Day of Ashes, commanding a base in Colorado that survived the initial bombardment. Now, she trained the new generation of soldiers, the young men and women who had grown up underground with stories of the world that was taken from them. "You are not fighting for revenge," she told her recruits during their graduation ceremony. "You are fighting for justice. You are fighting so that no species in this galaxy will ever dare attack Earth again. You are fighting for the 3 billion souls who cannot fight for themselves." The recruits stood in perfect formation, their faces young, but their eyes old beyond their years. They had grown up in tunnels and caverns, breathing recycled air and eating synthetic food. They had never seen the sun, except in old photographs. But they knew exactly why they were here and what they needed to do. Daniel Cruz had risen through the ranks to become Patricia Holloway's chief of staff. He had spent 15 years by her side, helping coordinate the massive effort of rebuilding and preparation. On the eve of their emergence, he found her standing alone in an observation room, looking at a holographic map of the galaxy. "Are you ready for this?" he asked quietly. Patricia did not turn around. "I've been ready for 15 years, Daniel. Every morning, I wake up and remember. Every night I go to sleep and remember. I remember my sister who lived in Chicago. I remember my niece who was 8 years old and wanted to be an astronaut." Her voice remained steady. But Daniel could hear the pain beneath the calm surface. "I didn't even know we existed," she continued. "They bombed us for no reason except that we were there and they could. They killed 3 billion people because it was convenient, because we were in their way." She turned to face him at last. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Tomorrow, we show them what happens when you wake up a sleeping giant. Tomorrow, we teach the entire galaxy that humanity is not to be trifled with." The fleet launched from hidden bases across the planet at exactly midnight. 500 warships rose through concealed hatches and reached orbit in minutes. The Valari monitoring station that had been watching Earth for 15 years had just enough time to send a warning before it was destroyed. Admiral Nathan Price commanded the lead vessel, a massive battleship named the Retribution. He had been a fighter pilot on the Day of Ashes, one of the few who got into the air before the attack ended. He had spent 15 years imagining this moment. All ships form up, he ordered calmly. Set course for Valari space. It's time they learned that they didn't kill all of us. They just made the survivors very, very angry. The human fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind a planet that had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. In the underground command center, Patricia Holloway watched them go with a mixture of pride and sorrow. May God have mercy on them, she said quietly to Daniel, because we certainly won't. The war for galactic respect had begun. Humanity was done hiding. Humanity was done being afraid. And the Valari Dominion was about to discover that some sleeping enemies should never be awakened. The Valari. The colony world of Vesser Prime had never known war. 60 million citizens lived in beautiful cities, surrounded by forests of purple trees and lakes, so clear you could see straight to the bottom. Children played in parks while their parents worked in comfortable offices. Artists created beautiful sculptures and musicians composed gentle melodies. It was a paradise, and its people believed they were safe. They had heard stories about the conquest of Earth, of course. Everyone in the Dominion had, but that happened far away, to a primitive species that most Valari could not even picture clearly. The humans were just another entry in a long list of conquered peoples. Nothing to worry about, nothing to think about. Life on Vesser Prime continued as it always had, peaceful and prosperous. Admiral Nathan Price dropped out of faster-than-light travel at exactly sunrise, local time. His fleet of 200 warships formed a perfect sphere around the planet, blocking any escape routes. The Valari Defense Force stationed in orbit consisted of just 30 vessels, mostly old patrol ships that had not seen real combat in generations. Incoming transmission from the surface, his communications officer reported. They're demanding to know who we are and what we want. Nathan leaned back in his command chair and smiled grimly. Open a channel. Let them see exactly who we are. The face of a Valari administrator appeared on the screen. His 4 eyes were wide with confusion and the beginning of fear. Behind him, Nathan could see other officials scrambling to their stations. Unknown vessels, you have entered Valari Dominion space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately or face the consequences. Nathan let the silence stretch for a long moment before responding. My name is Admiral Nathan Price of the Earth Defense Force. 15 years ago, your people came to our world without warning. You bombed our cities. You killed 3 billion of our people. You gave us no chance to surrender, no opportunity to negotiate. You simply decided we should die, and then you left us to suffer. Valari Administrator's face went pale. His mouth opened and closed several times before he could speak. The humans. But that's impossible. You had no space travel capability. You were classified as a primitive species, we learned, Nathan said coldly. We had very good motivation. He leaned forward, and his voice dropped to something close to a whisper. You treated us like insects. Like pests to be exterminated. You never considered that we might survive. You never imagined we might come back? That was a mistake. The defense fleet of Vesser Prime launched immediately, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Human ships moved with speed and precision that the Valari had never encountered. Their kinetic weapons punched through shields that had been designed to stop plasma fire, not tungsten projectiles traveling at a fraction of light speed. The battle lasted less than an hour. Every Valari military vessel was destroyed. Nathan opened another channel to the planet below. You have 6 hours to evacuate your cities. Take whatever you can carry and move to the wilderness areas. After 6 hours, we will do to your cities exactly what you did 2 hours. Panic spread across Vesser Prime like wildfire. 60 million people rushed to escape the urban centers, clogging roads and transportation systems. Families grabbed children and elderly relatives and ran for their lives. Many did not make it. When the 6 hours ended, approximately 40 million people had reached safety in the forests and mountains. 20 million remained in the cities when the bombardment began. Nathan watched the destruction from his command deck, his face expressionless. Plasma beams rained down from human ships, turning beautiful architecture into molten slag. Parks where children had played became craters. Museums full of priceless art vanished in seconds. The death toll climbed rapidly. 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 15 million. His executive officer, a woman named Lisa Chen, stood beside him with tears streaming down her face. "Sir," she said quietly, "is this necessary? They're not soldiers. They're civilians." Ethan did not look away from the view screen. Were the people of New York soldiers? Were the children of Tokyo combatants? The Volari didn't ask those questions when they bombed Earth. They didn't give us 6 hours to evacuate. They gave us nothing. He turned to face her at last, and she saw something in his eyes that frightened her. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something that had been building for 15 years. "This is not revenge, Lieutenant. This is education. Every species in this galaxy needs to understand what happens when you attack humanity. If we show mercy now, they will think we are weak. They will think they can attack us again without consequences. We cannot allow that." The bombardment of Visser Prime continued until every city was destroyed. When it ended, Nathan broadcast one final message to the survivors hiding in the wilderness. "Tell your leaders what happened here? Tell them that Earth remembers every single person they killed. Tell them this is just the beginning." The human fleet jumped away, leaving behind a traumatized population and a burning world. News of the attack spread through the Volari Dominion like a plague. Colonies that had felt safe suddenly felt vulnerable. Military leaders demanded reinforcements for their defenses. Politicians argued about how to respond, but before they could organize a counterattack, Nathan Price struck again, and again, and again. Over the next 18 months, 14 Volari colony worlds fell to human fleets. Each attack followed the same pattern, surrounding the planet, destroying the defense forces, giving civilians time to evacuate, and then reducing the cities to ruins. The death toll climbed into the hundreds of millions. Patricia Holloway watched the reports from her command center on Earth, coordinating the campaign with cold precision. She felt no joy in the destruction. She had lost the capacity for joy on the Day of Ashes, but she felt satisfaction. Satisfaction that the Volari were finally learning the price of their cruelty. "They're calling us monsters," Daniel Cruz told her one evening. "The galactic news networks are full of stories about human atrocities." Patricia nodded slowly. "Good. Let them fear us. Let every species in this galaxy know that attacking Earth means extinction. Maybe then they'll think twice before bombing innocent worlds." She turned back to her tactical displays, planning the next phase of the campaign. The Volari thought we would die quietly. They thought we would fade into history like all the other species they've conquered. They were wrong. We survived. We evolved. And now we're coming for everything they hold dear. The war for revenge had only just begun. But already the Volari Dominion was starting to crumble, and the Galactic Council, watching from the sidelines, was beginning to realize that they had vastly underestimated the species called humanity. "Hi, Chancellor." Marath Seen of the Galactic Council had ruled over the assembly of 47 species for nearly 3 decades. He had seen wars begin and end. He had watched empires rise and fall. He had guided the Council through crises that threatened the stability of entire star systems. But nothing in his long experience had prepared him for the emergency session he now faced. The Council chamber was filled with anxious representatives, their voices overlapping in dozens of languages as translation systems struggled to keep up. Holographic displays showed maps of Volari space, now dotted with red markers indicating destroyed worlds. The death toll had passed 500 million and showed no signs of slowing. "Order," Marath Seen commanded, his deep voice cutting through the chaos. "We will have order in this chamber." The noise gradually faded as representatives took their seats. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Every species present understood that what was happening to the Volari could happen to them. Ambassador Yiltek of the Karathi Republic rose to speak first. His species was known for their logical thinking and careful analysis, but even he seemed shaken. "How is this possible?" he demanded. The humans were cataloged as a primitive species. They had no faster-than-light capability. They had no advanced weapons. The Volari Conquest report indicated they were completely pacified. Admiral Zethras of the Council Defense Force stepped forward to answer. He was a massive creature with thick armor plating and 6 limbs, a member of a species bred for warfare over thousands of years. Even he looked concerned. The Valari report was incomplete, he admitted. They assumed the humans would simply die out after the initial bombardment. They never sent occupation forces. They never established monitoring stations until years later. By the time they started paying attention, the humans had already developed functional FTL technology. Developed it how? Another representative shouted. That kind of advancement takes centuries. Zethras consulted his datapad. Our intelligence suggests they reversed-engineered crashed Valari scout ships. They also appear to have made significant improvements to the basic designs. Their current vessels are faster and more heavily armed than anything in the Valari fleet. The chamber erupted into chaos again. Species that had lived in peace for generations suddenly found themselves contemplating war. Some demanded immediate military action against Earth. Others argued for diplomatic solutions. A few suggested simply abandoning the Valari. To their fate, Marathsine listened to the arguments for hours before finally raising his hand for silence. We cannot ignore this situation, he said slowly. If the Valari Dominion falls completely, nothing will stop humanity from expanding their campaign to other species. Today, it is the Valari. Tomorrow, it could be any of us. Then we destroy them, growled a representative from a species known for its military strength. We assemble a combined fleet and wipe them out before they become a greater threat. And how many ships do you propose to lose in that effort? Asked a quieter voice. Everyone turned to look at the speaker, a small creature with large eyes and delicate features. Ambassador Kella of the Minduri Collective rarely spoke, but when she did, others listened. The humans have defeated every force sent against them, Kella continued. Their technology advances at a rate we have never seen. Their tactics are unpredictable and effective. A direct military assault could cost us millions of lives and still fail. She paused, letting her words sink in. I suggest a different approach. We send a diplomatic mission. We offer them membership in the Council. We make peace before this conflict spreads beyond Valari space. Proposal sparked immediate debate. Many representatives found the idea offensive. How could they negotiate with a species that had killed hundreds of millions? How could they welcome mass murderers into the Council? But others saw the wisdom in Kella's suggestion. Sometimes peace required swallowing pride. Eventually, Marathsine called for a vote. The result was close, but diplomacy won by a narrow margin. The Council would send representatives to Earth to negotiate. The question of who would lead the mission proved difficult. Most species were afraid to send their ambassadors into contact with the humans. The risk seemed too great. Finally, they found an unlikely volunteer. Telia Marsh had been one of the few humans living. Off-world during the Day of Ashes, she had been working as a translator on a neutral space station, learning alien languages and customs. When news of the attack reached her, she had tried desperately to return home, but no one would take her. She spent 15 years in exile, watching from afar as her species transformed into something fierce and terrifying. I'll do it, she told the Council. Let me speak to my people. Maybe I can convince them to stop. Marathsine looked at her with a mixture of hope and skepticism. You believe they will listen to you? After everything that has happened? Talia shook her head slowly. I don't know, but I have to try. The universe can't survive if humanity keeps going down this path. Someone has to show them there's another way. The diplomatic mission arrived in Earth orbit 3 weeks later. Talia stood on the observation deck of the Council ship, looking down at the world she had once called home. Even from space, she could see the scars. The craters where cities had stood were still visible, dark wounds on the planet's surface that would take centuries to heal. Incoming transmission, the ship's captain announced. They're asking for identification. Tell them who I am, Talia said quietly. Tell them I've come home. The response came moments later. A human face appeared on the screen, a naval officer with hard eyes and a suspicious expression. Thalia Marsh, we know who you are. The Supreme Commander will receive the Council delegation in orbit. But understand this, we are not here to negotiate surrender. Earth does not surrender. Earth never surrenders again. Thalia nodded, her heart heavy. I understand. We just want to talk. The shuttle trip to the human command station was short, but tense. Council delegates sat in nervous silence, surrounded by armed human soldiers who watched them with barely concealed hostility. The scars of the Day of Ashes were written on every face. Patricia Holloway met them in a conference room overlooking Earth. She was older now, her hair silver, and her face lined with age and grief. But her eyes were still sharp, still burning with the cold fire that had kept her going for 15 years. You want to negotiate? She said flatly. The council that did nothing while our cities burned. The council that accepted the Valari report and moved on. Now you want to talk. Marathsine stepped forward carefully. We made a mistake, Supreme Commander. We failed to investigate the Valeri claims. We failed to protect your species. For that, we offer our deepest apologies. Patricia laughed bitterly. Apologies. 3 billion dead. And you offer apologies. We offer more than that. Marathsine continued. We offer justice. The Valar leadership will be arrested and tried for war crimes. Your species will receive full membership in the Galactic Council with all rights and privileges. Reparations will be paid. Your people will never face such an attack again. The room fell silent. Thalia held her breath, watching Patricia's face for any sign of softening. For a long moment, the Supreme Commander simply stared at the council delegation with unreadable eyes. Then she spoke 3 words that changed everything. Gee, that's not enough. Patricia Holloway stood before the United Human Assembly in the Great, this underground chamber that had served as humanity's parliament for 15 years. Representatives from every surviving nation sat in tiered rows, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. Behind her, screens showed the Valari homeworld surrounded by the largest fleet ever assembled by human hands. 3,000 warships hung in space like a ring of steel, ready to deliver the final blow. The Galactic Council has made their offer, Patricia announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. Full membership. Reparations for 300 years. War crimes trials for the Valari leadership. The complete dismantling of their military. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some voices called out in approval. Others shouted for rejection. The debate had been raging for days. Ever since the council delegation had presented their terms, Admiral Nathan Price stood from his seat in the military section. His uniform bore the medals of 14 successful campaigns, and his face showed the weariness of a man who had seen too much death. Supreme Commander, with respect, their offer is inadequate. The Valari killed 3 billion of our people. They destroyed our civilization. They left us to die in the ruins. Justice demands complete destruction. Shouts of agreement echoed through the chamber. Many assembly members had lost entire families on the Day of Ashes. Their wounds had never healed. Their hunger for revenge had only grown stronger over the years. Patricia raised her hand for silence. When the noise faded, she spoke again. I understand your anger, Admiral. I share it. For 15 years, I have dreamed of this moment. I have imagined Valari cities burning the way ours burned. I have wanted them to feel every ounce of pain they inflicted on us. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was softer. But I have also been thinking about what comes after. We can destroy them completely. We have the power. Our fleet is in position. One order from me and the Valari homeworld becomes a dead rock. Their species ends today. She turned to face the screen showing the enemy planet. And then what? We become the monsters the galaxy already thinks we are. We prove that we're just another violent species with better weapons. We teach the universe that strength is all that matters, that mercy is weakness, that might makes right. General Christina Vega rose to object. Supreme Commander, they showed us no mercy. Why should we show them any? Patricia nodded slowly. That's exactly the question, isn't it? Why should we be better than them? She walked to the center of the chamber, looking at the faces around her. Young faces and old faces. Faces scarred by loss and hardened by suffering. Faces that had known nothing but darkness and struggle for 15 years. Wow. I'll tell you why. Because if we destroy them completely, we become exactly what they were. We become the empire that wipes out weaker species without a second thought. We become the predators that the galaxy needs to fear. She pointed at the screens. But if we show mercy now, after everything they did to us, we become something far more powerful. We become the species that could have destroyed their enemies, but chose not to. We become the proof that strength and compassion can exist together. Daniel Cruz stepped forward from his position beside the command platform. He had served Patricia faithfully for 15 years, and he knew her better than anyone. "What are you proposing, Supreme Commander?" Patricia turned back to face the assembly. "I propose we accept the Council's terms, with additions. The Volari will pay reparations for 300 years. Their military will be permanently dismantled. Their leaders will face war crimes trials. And every year, on the anniversary of the Day of Ashes, their government will send representatives to Earth. They will stand in the ruins of our cities and publicly acknowledge what they did." She paused. Letting her words sink in, they wanted to make us an example. Instead, we make them one. Every species in this galaxy will know what happens when you attack humanity. Not because we destroyed them, but because we could have and chose not to. Fear our strength, but respect our restraint. That lesson will last longer than any crater. The assembly erupted into debate. Some supported her proposal. Others condemned it as weakness. Ours passed as representatives argued and pleaded and demanded. Nathan Price made impassioned speeches about justice. Christina Vega called for complete victory. Young officers who had grown up with nothing but hatred in their hearts begged for the destruction they had been promised. But in the end, the vote went Patricia's way. By a margin of just 23 votes, the Assembly chose mercy over annihilation. The transmission went out to the human fleet moments later. Nathan Price stood on his command deck, staring at the orders on his screen with disbelief. "Stand down," he whispered. "After everything we've done to get here?" His executive officer, Lisa Chen, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sir, the Assembly has spoken. The war is over." Nathan closed his eyes. Images flashed through his mind. His family home in San Francisco reduced to glass. His parents, his brothers, his childhood friends, all gone in an instant. He had spent 15 years preparing to avenge them. And now he was being told to stop. But he was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. "All ships," he said heavily, "stand down from attack positions. Maintain defensive formation only. The campaign is concluded." On the Volari homeworld, billions of citizens who had been waiting to die watched in stunned disbelief as the human fleet did nothing. They had expected bombardment. They had expected death. Instead, they received the strangest gift imaginable: survival. 3 months later, a formal peace treaty was signed in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. Patricia Holloway stood beside High Chancellor Marathine, their signatures marking the end of the war and the beginning of something new. "You surprised us," Marathine admitted quietly as the celebrations continued around them. "We expected you to destroy them." Patricia looked out the window at Earth, still scarred but slowly healing. "So did I, Chancellor. For 15 years, I thought destruction was the only answer. But somewhere along the way, I realized that revenge wasn't enough. We needed to build something better, something that would last." She turned to face him directly. "The Volari tried to end us. Instead, they forced us to evolve. We're stronger now than we ever were before. But strength without wisdom is just brutality. The galaxy has enough brutality already." 100 years later, a monument stood on the site where New York City had once existed. Representatives of every species in the council attended the centennial ceremony, paying their respects to the 3 billion souls who had died on the Day of Ashes. The inscription carved into the memorial read, "Here stood a great city, destroyed without cause or warning. Here began humanity's long journey to the stars." May all who read these words remember that civilizations are judged not by their power to destroy, but by their choice to build. Beneath those words, in smaller letters, was a quote from Patricia Holloway, who had lived long enough to see humanity become one of the most respected species in the galaxy. They expected us to die. Instead, we chose to live. And in living, we became something they never imagined. Not just survivors, but leaders. Not just warriors, but teachers. The galaxy tried to crush us. We answered by showing them a better way. And at the very bottom of the monument, someone had carved an unofficial addition that the council decided to leave in place. 2 simple words that captured everything humanity had learned through 15 years of darkness and the long decades of rebuilding that followed. Never again. The stars that had once seemed so cold and distant now welcomed humanity as equals. The species that had been marked for extinction had risen to become something far greater. And throughout the galaxy, the story of Earth's revenge was told and retold. Not as a tale of destruction, but as a lesson in what it truly means to be strong.